ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Hi there, my name is Matt Petrowsky. I've been a FileMaker software developer for well over 20 years, and the video that you're about to watch is a live stream that I recorded live. Now, if the content that you find doesn't really match what you're looking for, it's very possible that this is a video that's part of a series. So if it doesn't make sense where you're finding this particular video, then just click on the description down below and you will find a link that will take you to the full series, and you can start with video number 1 and go through all of the videos in sequence. If you like the content and it helps you out, then great. If you'd like more information, then you can always check me out at FileMakerMagazine.com. All right, here we are. Are you ready to go again? Are you ready to learn more about FileMaker and how to design a nice FileMaker solution? Of course, nice is always relative to what our skill set is, and I am going to give you more FileMaker skills. All right, so as always, feel free to subscribe. Give me a like if I'm helping you out, and if you have questions, you can put those in the comments below. Otherwise, if you're watching it live, I've got it on low latency so that you can ask your question as I'm doing this, and there's just a short delay. All right, so let's see. I think I have something here to fix. Yeah, it looks like as I drag this out, as I design, I want this button that's going to be a nice attached to our script that we're going to be writing to be floating. So in order to float something in FileMaker, we use our auto sizing here, and we turn off the anchor, which I'm going to do. If I want this to still be anchored to the top, that is something that you do take into consideration with an iOS application, because when you're designing, it's always a good idea to remember that when you put the user into a, and I'm just going to make this gray, trying to think at the same time. Look at our containment that we just had right there. I dragged that in that object, so that's not what I want. I want that out of the object. Please, FileMaker. There we go. What I was saying is it's always a good idea to remember that there's a keyboard that's going to come up. I have an object somewhere in one of my other files that approximates the size of the keyboard. But we want to have that available when we're designing for iOS. Just keep it off screen once we get the actual size of the keyboard, and remember that we want to put that on screen when it comes to the user interacting in fields, and we want the user to interact in this top portion, knowing that if FileMaker doesn't have enough room, it will shift and adjust the layout, and sometimes that's really disconcerting. So I always keep an object when I'm designing for iOS off to the side that might simulate the keyboard. But I believe my anchoring now is going to put that in, and I've got my license. User is going to come in. None of these will be checked, and they're going to click this button. All right, so we're starting with scripting. Scripting and designing your UI and your schema at the same time is all part of FileMaker. You are in and out, so I'm into the script space right now. I'm out of the script space. I'm into define database, and I'm defining my database, and I'm out right there. I'm into manage layouts, and I've got the layouts, and so I highly suggest you learn those keys. You'll see me do that quite a bit. In the scripting workspace, we only have just a few scripts right now. We had our initial script of scan, and there is a script, or excuse me, a custom function that I put in every FileMaker database no matter what. It is called developer, and I highly suggest that you do this, because when you are developing, or whenever a developer is working in FileMaker, you are working in the environment just as much as the user is that's going to use your solution. The difference is you need to do higher level things than the user is going to be able to do. But you have to treat the fact that this environment is very much an environment for you as much as it is for the user. And you want to see certain things while you're developing and you're debugging. It is a major part of being able to write a successful FileMaker application. So I'm going to switch over here, and I'm going to go to GitHub, github.com, and we'll go to FileMaker standards. Now I showed you this was where the, I created this like in 2010 or something like that, 7 years ago. Look at that, crazy. And it hasn't been updated a whole lot to do these things. But when I go to this URL, which, by the way, let me put that right there. It's github.com and then FileMaker standards. And then you will see the FMP standards is the repo. That's what they call it, a repository for version control. And this function right here, this developer FMFN, this is something that I've used in pretty much ever since I created it. It looks like in 2011. It still applies. You know, when it comes to dates and code, the better you get, the better you are able to look at code and evaluate whether it has aged or not. In the context of FileMaker, really experience only plays the role of knowing whether something is no longer valid if you've kept up with each version. If you're brand new and getting started with FileMaker, it's almost impossible to tell. This was written in 2011. Is it any good anymore? Most of the time in FileMaker, if it works, it is usually good, unless it was written by a developer who's not as skilled. Really, in order to know whether something truly is good or not based on the usage of it, it boils down to being familiar with the industry. I'm going to copy this. There is a danger when you're copying things from the web in that on here, there is this button that allows me to go to the raw, which that actually just opens up the web browser and allows me to do a Command A or a Control A and copy this, and I can pretty much assume that no extra characters are in there. Back in the UI, I know that selecting this probably won't include any characters, but I know that JavaScript is being used in order to create this wrap around here and the line numbers. And so sometimes copying things from the web will include characters that sometimes don't work. I haven't come across that on GitHub, but many times when you're searching for problems and code, if you find it on places like Stack Exchange, etc., you always have to know that when you copy, you're taking whatever the source says it wants to have that's there. That includes whatever the web developments or the web software, the content management system decides to throw in there. For example, in fact, very big example is quotes. The web software many times, now GitHub it won't do it, but if you got this code off of some other website and that website wants to be really nice, it will curly quote the quotes of code sometimes and it won't work and you'll be like, oh, I'm frustrated. That's why you have to be able to watch for those things. So on GitHub, if you go to raw, you can select all of this. I can copy it. And I'm going to go to my solution and go into the manage, go to the custom functions and not the custom menus, Matt. Cancel, just say okay, that's fine. Go back to the manage and I want the custom functions, which I did assign a keyboard shortcut, which we learned about in one of the early videos. The one thing I love about custom functions it is a universal place where you can put code that the whole file can access. It's not a script that's tied to context or a field that's tied to context. It is universally accessible. So when you copy something, you can copy, this is what's called the prototype. This one does not have any parameters, so we don't have to use the parentheses when we specify it. But quickly, what this does, if we read the code, is it is simply looking at extended privileges, account privileges, and most importantly, the privilege set name right there. So I don't think I'm blocking that. But full access right here. So by looking at whether a privilege set is full access, we're able to do different things in our scripts that normal users can't have access to. This is a very important concept in FileMaker. And once this developer function is here, you can now use this in the whole of your solution, in your UI and also in the in your scripting as well. And I'm just going to load that so that I can see what's going on in the background and just hide that one. I've got to see off screen my feed. Okay, so let's implement this on the scan. So we're going to have this scan button right here. And this, what does this developer custom function do for us? Well, we would be able to put in an if right now and say if developer. And what we can do is in this situation, we can put the insert from device, which is capturing from the camera. But here in this part, we could put whatever we want. I'm going to just put a dialogue here. This is only ever going to show this dialogue of starting capture. And then, put in whatever you want. we'll do it here as we develop. But getting that function in was really important. So I'll save this, and let's make sure that our insert from device is connected to this button. I'm going to layout mode, double click on my button. The button is currently set to do nothing. I'm going to choose for it to perform a script. I'm going to choose that script of scan right there, and I'm going to say OK, and then we've got our button right there. I forgot to start my timer, but no problem. We'll just give it 9 minutes. All right. Why did I add the developer? This is where we get to one of the core fundamentals of scripting, that there are FileMaker developers out there that they will suggest what I'm going to do right now, and I am going to suggest that you not do this right now. Allow user abort. And that goes up at the top, and the suggestion is put this at the top of every FileMaker script that you have. That's not cool. That's not good, and here's why. When you are working in FileMaker and when you are developing, this allow user abort means that you are not able to stop the remainder of this script. By default, if this doesn't exist when you're scripting, that means that you are able to, when this script runs, and let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to put in a pause right now. I'm going to put the pause up at the top, and we'll add some spaces here around this. I'm just hitting the return key in order to get those spaces. So when I run this, actually pause indefinitely, we're going to pause for a duration of 5 seconds and say OK. So in normal FileMaker operations, this is connected to my script right here. When I click this button, it's going to start the script. The script is going to pause for 5 seconds. In normal FileMaker operation, we can see that it says continue or cancel. I can click cancel like that, and I can stop the processing of the script. This really impacts us when we're writing loops. Or if I have allow user abort off, which we will turn it on, allow user abort off, meaning you cannot stop this script once it has started. We will save that script, come back over to our UI and click this. I do not have a cancel. Command period also is similar to the cancel. I can't cancel out of this. I can't stop. Well, it finished the script and ran my string, and click cancel, and this particular step is not, this doesn't work on desktop, so it's not going to do anything. This to me is very dangerous, but we want the benefits of this, meaning we want to be able to say that the user cannot cancel out of this process. We want this benefit, but I don't want to sprinkle it into all of my scripts because I may end up with thousands of scripts in this solution. So what I'm going to suggest is that you use another script in order to say whether or not this is going to happen based on whether you are a developer. Now what happens in FileMaker scripting is FileMaker scripting cascades with some of its functions. So for example, in our new script here, which happens to be blank, I'm going to click once in this and rename this, and I'm going to call it user control. Or let's call it script control right here. This is going to be up in the top. We don't have any organization. I haven't added any folders yet. I will be as the solution evolves. But this is the one thing that I want to do first out of the gate because it allows me to assign the fact of control is either going to be on and it's going to be mine, or I'm going to be working in FileMaker as if I can do whatever I want. So just being able to cancel unwieldy scripts. So here we're going to put in if developer, and we are going to put in these two commands, allow user abort off, and then we're going to put on one other one, which is error capture. Set error capture on. Now what this does is setting the error capture on means that in FileMaker, normally FileMaker does not have this turned on, and it's going to show you its own error dialogues. When we're working with FileMaker solution and we want full control, we don't want FileMaker to show its dialogues. We want to know if something goes wrong, we're going to catch that error and then we'll let us take control. We'll show a dialogue or we'll show a card window. We do what we want to do. Now this doesn't work right here. if developer. So if I'm the developer, then I want you to turn on allow user abort, and then I want you to turn on the error capture. No. In order to flip anything in FileMaker, we can simply just put a not in front of it. So in other words, if you're not the developer, meaning you're anybody else, if you're an average user, here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn on the allow user abort, meaning you cannot abort, and we're going to set the error capture on. So this one is a little bit confusing. You're thinking, do I want to turn the abort on? No, this is inverse. It's allow the user abort, meaning if it was on, they would be able to abort. So these two always seem flipped to me. But what we have is we have one subscript now, which is the one subscript to rule them all. I forget what movie that was, but anyway, you get the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put this, this up at the top. I'm going to take this off of the top of my scripts. I'm not going to sprinkle it across all of my different scripts all over the place. Instead, I am going to perform a script of script control. This now gives me complete control in terms of what happens at the beginning of every one of my scripts. And in this situation, when this script starts to run, it is going to go over here. It's going to say, if you're not the developer, you are not going to be able to stop this, and you are not going to be able to turn off error capture, meaning the solution's going to handle it. So the argument from some FileMaker developers, advanced, although they will be, yeah, but I can, a user could try to force control this with command period within the microsecond that it takes from the time that the script is triggered and gets over to my subscript, all because of the fact that the allow a user abort is not right here. I'm like, okay, go on with your good self and go ahead. Most users would never have a clue, and if you're that advanced and you would be able to somehow write some other program that could get it in with the milliseconds before, great for you. I want the flexibility and control that the very first thing that's going to happen is it's going to go over here, and plus within this script for control, I get to determine based on my conditions when this actually happens. In fact, I can take this a step further, and I could put in a script parameter, and that parameter could be based on some other variable or what have you. But for the most part, this is what's allowed me to have really good control over my solutions in terms of the user can't stop things, but I can as the developer. I can work as normal, and this isn't working. Command period. Stop that script. Stop the loop that's processing 1,000 records. So let's see if this works and if it cascades. We're going to flip the logic here and see if this works. We're going to say, if you are the developer, we're going to turn on the allow user abort and see if this works. So I'm going to run this script now, and there we go. We have our proof. The allow user abort cascaded from the script that it called. In other words, our script called this one, turned on the allow user abort, which now persists onto this script as well. So this is what I suggest for any new FileMaker learner, or intermediate or advanced. Even if you've worked in FileMaker and you've been sprinkling that allow user abort into all of your scripts, I'm suggesting you switch to this model because it's just a little bit more control and a little bit more power. So at this stage, we are ready to start to write our script. I have my control of what I want to do. Down the road, an advanced topic, something you'll find on the magazine website, would be error logging and error handling. It'll be a long time in this series before we ever get to that, and I don't want to confuse you with that. But we will set up a user table and so forth. We are going to take this off and set up our actual script. So in this regards, I think my script is set up. I've got my development. It's going to say that the user can't stop this process. They are going to capture from this. One thing we can put in is we can look at, since we're scripting here, if we go over here to the compatibility setting, we can say that on iOS this works, but why is it showing that it's actually there? Finally it shows it. You can see right there it's confusing. When you are set to all right here, and I'm developing this solution for Macintosh, this should be grayed out. So if I have to go to the Macintosh, there it does gray out, meaning this is not available on the Macintosh, this insert from device. It's only available on mobile. So I'm going to put in a little widget here, not a widget, a condition, if, and we are going to put get system platform. All right. I just heard in my ear, my timer just went off. I'm probably beyond my 15 minutes. I'm going to show you the documentation that I use as the wrap up for this video, and then we'll wrap this video up. All right, so there is in FileMaker, I already showed you that you can go up to the help, and I want to find out how can I control based on the platform of whether they're using iOS or whether they're using the Macintosh, what direction this script is going to go. So the FileMaker Pro Advanced Help is going to load a web page, which I will drag on screen. I showed you that you can download this to your local hard drive, and I highly suggest that you do that. But if you're going to be an advanced FileMaker developer, I'm going to suggest that you use a tool called Dash. Dash is really a very cool tool because it allows you to have complete sets of documentation for all kinds of other languages. Now, if you're not at the point where you're learning another language, maybe you're just learning FileMaker, then Dash will work for you just fine. But if you are using JavaScript, FileMaker, Python, CSS, HTML, questions about anything programming-wise, Dash is a nice tool centralized. And there is an equivalent Windows tool. I'll have to put it in the comments if I can remember to do that. In Dash, we can add a catalog or a doc set. So follow along with me here. In Dash, we have this user contributed area. And these, it'll say that some of them are old or supported or not supported. But if I go to the user contributed and I type in FileMaker, it will find it from JSON, and then there's this little arrow where you can choose all of the different versions. And here I'm working in 18, so I'll just click to download 18. It's only 11 megabytes. We can see that right there, already installed. And we can say, okay, it's now installed, and I can load the FileMaker 18 documentation. So from this point, I can now search the FileMaker documentation in this tool, and it allows me to switch to other tool sets. And I'm going to put in System Platform. And there we go. So this is how I reference all of my functions in FileMaker using Dash. I can see that Get System Platform as I scroll down here, released in FileMaker 6. And I can see right here that it's got a 1, this odd pattern of -2. I could explain the history of that. It dealt with Windows 32 versus 64 and differences in Mac. Forces you to do some extra checking here. But I can see that if System Platform returns 3, then it's on iOS. So I can use this function, and sometimes I'll even copy from here. Over here, which I already have, if get system platform equals 3, and in this case, what I'm going to do is change the logic. I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to put does not equal 3, meaning it's anything other than iOS, which could be server, could be what have you. I'm going to show a dialog in here. Otherwise, I'm going to insert from device. So here we'll type in dialog. If I could type, there it is. I'll just get that. We'll put not supported. Okay, fine. Here's your quotes. FileMaker quote. This feature is only available on iOS. All right, so I want to give you a clue into how I'm thinking as I type this. As I type this, I'm thinking, are there other areas in this solution where I might want to show this? And that is the question that you should always, always, always be asking yourself when you are scripting. If that is the case, if you can answer yes, there are other areas in my solution that I might want to show this dialog, that is an immediate clue that you should break this code out. I can't emphasize this enough when it comes to programming, that as you're programming, if you don't ask yourself that type of question, you will literally litter a show custom dialog script step in 15 different steps. And the first time you want to change it, you will hate yourself and you will be like, I have to go to 15 other steps in order to do this. So I would, at this point, take the time, create a new script, and say, not in iOS. And simply just move that step over. So in the scan, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over to this. I'm going to paste this. As simple as it is, just leave it as it is. Go over to my script and replace that with a perform script. This is what is not taught when FileMaker new learners are taught to program in FileMaker. They're simply just taught the steps. Like, here, use this step, use that. You need to use a show dialog. But the implications aren't taught to you that if you are going to have something that will, spread out like weeds, you need to be able to control it. So in this case, by saying not in iOS, now what I'm able to do is I'm not going to sprinkle that across all of my other scripts. I'm going to call it once, and if I want to make changes, I just go to the main source, I edit that code, and then that's the one place that I do it in terms of my code. So I'm at 3 now. I'm gonna have to start to come up with some organization, which we'll probably do in the next video. But I can now, under this, I've got my script control, and I am going to perform that. If it does not equal 3 when I click this, there, it tells me my dialog, this feature not available on iOS. Otherwise, if you use it on the iOS device, it'll simply capture the barcode, and we will move from that point forward in terms of our scripting and UI and everything else. So I hope this content has helped you out, these little tips. I promise you they are going to save you so much time and make you feel more confident when you are developing in FileMaker. I did get a few questions in here. I'll go ahead and take the time, pop out the chat, and see what those are that came in here. For those of you that are watching, just a handful of people. 20, Lord of the Ring, that was the movie. Thank you. The one to rule them all. Phi asks, Matt, on another subject, can you show how to make a tree structure solution with more than 4 grandchildren? Big, complex question, Phi, or Phi. You can find all kinds of content on the magazine site. Sorry for the shameless plug, but there's tons of content about trees, hierarchies, parent-child relationships within the same file and within the same table and not within the same table. And J Hall asks, something with the send mail script. You should set it up with both its own script as well as using custom functions for the settings. Actually, good question there on the send mail script. Honest admission, I have only used the send mail script step in FileMaker all of once in all of my development. Mostly because I don't trust it, and I can tell you why in a future video. Mostly it's because it's based on scripting languages to communicate with the OS to talk to the local mail client that's registered with the mail to, I believe. There are other ways to deal with that. You can either send mail directly out of FileMaker using a service, using curl, or however you want. If you are tied to using the local client in order to create an email, and I imagine a lot of people are, you can write your own Apple script, or there's other ways to do that with actually just using a simple URL. But to be honest, I personally have not used, and we'll take a look at it, the send mail step itself. Actually, if you want to know, because I'm sure you're interested as much as I was when I was learning FileMaker, this particular step in ScriptMaker is actually on the Macintosh here using AppleScript of all things. I believe they've got this dialog, and I believe they pass all of this information to an AppleScript that handles it for you, unless they've modified it in more recent years. FileMaker Advanced 18, I'm already in it. Let's see if I can do open, let's see, show in Finder. There it was, show in Finder. So there's FileMaker 18. This is one of the benefits of watching my videos. You get to learn all kinds of weird, funky, cool stuff about FileMaker. Watch this. I've got the application loaded here. I'm going to show the package contents, something that Claris and FileMaker Inc. never really likes you to do, but it benefits you to know. We go to our resources, and I forget where the script is. I would be able to do a find for it here, but I'm guessing it's been such a long time since I've been here. Base LS Pro. There's the themes. Look, there's all the themes that FileMaker has. Dynamic templates, default glyphs. It's probably in somewhere. I forget where it is, but somewhere in there, in the bundle that makes the FileMaker application, and on Windows it's probably stored within the registry, possibly. There is a file that is just an AppleScript file that deals with the mail. I might be able to search right here. Let's put in mail, and it'll limit. There we go. Send mail template PDF. There's com.apple.script. I believe this is the AppleScript that is used for sending mail within FileMaker, and if I double click this, I'm guessing it won't open. Dun, dun, dun. Cannot be opened because it was saved as a run-only script. So unless I am incorrect, this dialog is simply just passing information from FileMaker to that AppleScript in order to call the local client. And again, like I state, I can do that with my own AppleScript or other languages. So that's just an admission here. Doesn't mean don't use it. If it works, it works. Sometimes I have heard that it doesn't. But we'll talk about that in the future. We'll talk about the method that you can use using a URL, which is just a mail to URL and passing that information, or using a mail service like MailChimp and sending direct to that service and having it go out that way. The biggest issue usually comes when you're sending a lot of mail out of a system like FileMaker or what have you. You've got systems that will block addresses and things like that. But I just love talking about FileMaker, so I just extended this video by however many minutes there, 10, just to show you. All right, so I think that's going to do it for this video. I hope you've learned some. Give me a thumbs up if I helped you out, if you like this, if you stuck in for the whole video. You can always subscribe, get notified when I'm going to do these other live recordings of this series. And we will just move on in the next video. Just keep building this solution out and learning more about FileMaker. So much luck to you, and until next time, happy FileMaking.